that you could become a major player in. You have vast experience and leadership, and it could benefit the rest of the world. And I'm not just talking about the subcontinent, I'm talking about the rest of the world. There's a number of other areas, such as, and we'll just list them, obviously security of the homeland, training, you must train to protect the country, provision of peacekeeping forces in support of the international community, security of government and vital infrastructures, ceremonial duties. Ceremonial duties are very important. I used to think they were a waste of time with the Grenadier Guards and the changing of the Guard and all the rest of it. But it's a huge benefit to the public's perception of the armed forces. You also bring finances in to the government through tourism. So if you haven't got the ceremonial actions already in place, then invent them, start them. Put people out in dress uniform. Make it look good. Another big area is military aid to the civil police. Because again, as military personnel, we're not policemen. We don't have powers of arrest. Not certainly in the rest of the world. I don't think you have here. So we depend on the police to do the arresting. But the military aid goes to the civil police force in terms of bombs, fires, natural disasters, to strengthen, not to take over. Security of major events, again in support of the police. Counter-terrorism operations, well that's obvious. And anti-piracy we've spoken about. General lessons from around the globe. One of the things that we have in common might not be language. The one thing we have in common is a military ethos. We have trust, integrity and honour. And every military person I've ever met in the world has those three characteristics. We all have that ethos. The one difficulty I've had since I left the military is getting a civilian to understand those three characteristics. Because they're not brought up with it, they're not bred with it. They haven't had to depend on the guy next to them to take the shot or to save your life. So it's very difficult. And we find it sometimes difficult to return to normal life. And we end up homeless. Currently in the United States there are over 30,000 ex-combatants who are on drugs, booze, homeless. You know, you can't imagine those sort of numbers. We have to look after them. This is the life post-armed forces. We need to look after our troops. Resettlement programs. And I'm talking here about resettlement for the armed forces, to look after the people that have done so well for your country. They should be going now. If they're going to get discharged in 2 years' time, they should be on some form of resettlement program. We need to try to avoid placing too many ex-servicemen in public service employment, because otherwise we end up with military solutions to civil problems. Not always a good idea. Each serviceman will have an individual and distinct need. Let me just run through them. They won't all be exactly the same need. They'll want different ones. So they'll need counselling. Now again, in the UK, we use civilian career counsellors who have no concept of what the military have been through. What we need is military personnel to become career counsellors who can then use that knowledge to counsel the troops during resettlement. Officers who have attended formal command and training courses, such as at the KDU, have gained incredible experience during combat. And they have leadership and organisation skills that will be invaluable to the reconstruction of the society. Resettlement training can be relevant to an individual's aspirations, but again, it can be aimed off to the government's aspirations. A fast reduction in the armed forces can create major issues. It can inhibit inhibit the reintegration of servicemen. Some servicemen, now I know Sri Lanka has got a tremendous record of education, probably one of the best in Southern Asia. But some soldiers sometimes don't necessarily have the brain power. So what we've got to do is somehow get them employed in work that still utilises their bodies and their abilities. Also, problem areas are the fact that de-radicalisation does not always work. Well, I've heard terms like the defeat of the LTT, the defeat of the terrorist. Yes, you have defeated the guys up north, My concern is the guys who aren't on your shores, the guys who are operating in, as Professor Owen says, in America, in the UK, and in other countries, who are going at it behind the back. Could it possibly mean a return to violence? Well, it might do, but I don't think it will ever get to where it has been. I think it may be one or two individuals, but it will be like the IRA. You've taken the legs of the animal away. So, well aware of time. To summarise, there's no doubt in my mind that during the post-conflict period, there is a major role for the armed forces, and we've seen that this morning, just now, with the Major General's presentation. There's many pressures as you move forwards from the international community. We've heard the Day01 report mentioned and things like this. We have the NGOs who are going to try and put pressures on, Amnesty International, etc., and more worryingly, the media. The problem is that people will look at this subjectively. They will not read, they will not understand what's going on. I've read the Day01 report, and I'm afraid that some of it might be true, but in the main, as a fairly common sense individual, I actually want to see evidence. I want to see reports. I want to see something there. We as academics don't accept subjective reports. We don't accept the word of someone against the word of another person. We want to see the evidence. And I'm afraid that if that had been put on my class and one of my students had written it, he would have got an F, go away and do it again. There's no doubt that there will be discussion in the future that 500,000 troops is too big a military for this country. We have a saying now that the armed forces in the UK will just about fit into Wembley. When I joined up, we were about 300,000 strong. We now will just about fit into Wembley. And there's more reductions on the way for the Brits. However, that will not stop us colonising. Don't think you've got away with it. We will be back. Especially America. But then you see that my problem... I'm going to go on an American rant here. The problem is that we gave the Americans the country back 300 years ago. They seem to think that they kicked us out. No, we didn't. We gave it them and said, OK, you look after it for us. Now look at the state of the country. Look what you've done to it. See? So you need the Brits to come back and start doing it again for you. So as soon as you're ready, we'll come back, Mara. At some point, we've got to develop the reduction of troops, and it should be done through a well-thought-out resettlement campaign, and I can see already that that's already there. An easy objective at this stage is to identify skills, specialist skills that you already have, match them directly into positions up north where they can be utilised. Construction workers, the demining that's going on. A successful resettlement strategy can contribute greatly to the social reconstruction, reconciliation and mitigating future violent conflict. In the short term, financial investment on resettlement training for troops can be expensive, but it is a worthwhile investment in the country's future. And I would beg all you as senior commanders, you know, you are where you are because of the guys that are at the bottom looking after you. So we have to look after them. When they leave, it's our job, it's our duty to look after those guys, regardless of who they are. The post-conflict use of the armed forces will be affected by the way the conflict was finalised, and this may take some very clever diplomacy, as in this conflict there was a very clear victor, which was obviously the Sri Lankan armed forces. The use of the armed forces must be seen to be in the interests of all communities and not protecting one side from the other. An area that will have been considered is the fact that some Tamils will return to violent means in the future, as they have certain splinter groups in the IRA and other such terrorist organisations. Whenever a terrorist organisation stops being a terrorist organisation and becomes a political organisation, someone splinters off. So you will have a new name, but same tactics. And I'm very pleased to see that the LTTE was very heavily involved in organised crime, exactly the same way that the IRA was. And I have one question which I may ask shortly. It's very easy to overreact at times when you do get the occasional bomb, the occasional suicide bomber. And I hope that the Sri Lanka government will have the mature character that they've shown in recent years to be able to guide the country through those rocky times into a very calm and peaceful future. The title of my paper was Use of the Armed Forces in Post-Conflict Scenarios, Lessons for Sri Lanka. In my opinion, you've already learnt your lessons, and you're already well ahead of that game. It's my belief that the answers to any problems come from within the country and not from without it. Basically, do what you're doing. Just produce a Sri Lankan solution to a Sri Lankan problem. Okay? I can't do it as a Brit. I can possibly put a British solution to a British problem. I don't have your culture. I haven't had 2,500 years of being in this country. So, you have to do it yourselves. Final post-conflict decisions will remain with the country and the ex-servicemen who will continue to service the country as they have always done with pride and honour. If I may conclude with a Buddhist saying, do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment. Thank you.